It was the summer of 480 BC. Air was quiet with occasional clunking sounds of swords and shields. There is Leonidas, the great warrior king of Sparta, and it was Thermopylae. The Greeks were ready to smash themselves against the mighty army. There was no fear. They were there to win or die. It was the summer that changed the fate of the Greek and Persian War. Leonidas was there to fight as a free man and die as a brave and fearless Spartan. How much truth and how much fiction is the story of 300? Let's dive into the ocean of history and get some answers. Why did 300 Spartans and their king come to fight with an army of thousands and thousands of Persians? Why did Leonidas bring a few men but not an army to fight? Why the apparently suicidal war of Spartans is so glorified in Greek history? In August 480 BC, Leonidas marched out of Sparta to meet Xerxes' army at Thermopylae with a small force, where he was joined by forces from other Greek city-states who put themselves under his command to form an army of 7,000 strong fighters. At that time, Sparta's autumn festival was going on, and it was considered unholy for a king to wage war. King Leonidas was a great king and a political figure. He decided very tactfully to take his personal honor guard of 300 men with him. It was not technically wrong or unholy because self-defense was the right of any warrior. The plan was that Athenians would face the Persian fleet and Leonidas would march towards Thermopylae and hold the forces of Persia until the Greek forces were assembled and ready. Thermopylae was a rugged, craggy landscape of thick brush, thorny shrubs, and steep hillsides where severe weather, rapid downpours, and scorching heat was the norm. It was a narrow mountain pass, and Leonidas chose it because it was very much suitable to the war style of Spartans. They will stand together like a wall with their shields covering them and block hundreds of men. It was a great defensive position for the Greeks. When King Leonidas reached Thermopylae, it was disturbing to discover the Thermopylae path that would put the enemy right behind the Greek warriors and they would be surrounded. But it was too late to change the strategy, and Leonidas decided to keep the Persians on the other side as long as possible. If King Leonidas knew about the Thermopylae path, then how does history say that they were betrayed? My dear friends, let me tell you what actually happened. Xerxes was a powerful king of Persians. He knew that his mighty army would force Greeks to retreat and accept defeat. They would not dare to start a fight. But he was wrong when he sent the messenger to Leonidas to lay down their arms. Leonidas firmly said, "Come and get them." For 4 days, Xerxes' army waited, and when they saw that the Greeks were ready to fight, they came onto them on the 5th day with full power. But what happened was unexpected and made the god king jump multiple times on his golden throne on which he was sitting and watching the battle. Xerxes did not know that Spartan life was hard, often brutal, and very militarized. Men and boys often went without the daily comforts enjoyed in other Greek city-states such as Athens. The whole Spartan system was designed to toughen up the male population to make them ultimate warriors of their day. To the Spartans, the men of Athens and elsewhere were pampered weaklings, and they were taught to despise any show of weakness, and they showed their ultimate warrior abilities. The second day was the same for Persians. Spartans made a mountain of dead Persians. Xerxes was mad. That was when a local Greek shepherd named Ephialtes handed them the secret to victory. Ephialtes told Xerxes about the Thermopylae path, which led around the mountain ridge and ended behind the Greek positions. In exchange for a handsome reward, he promised to show the Persian soldiers the way. There is a big misconception about Ephialtes' connection to Sparta. He was a local Greek and had no connection and vengeance towards Spartans. Apparently, this was the point where Leonidas knew that he would lose, but the facts are different. 1. Leonidas already knew about the Thermopylae path and did not believe that they would be holding the mountain pass and win the battle. 2. For Leonidas, the win was assembling the Greek city-states against the one big enemy. 3. Thermopylae was a strategic plan to get time for Greek forces to assemble. 4. The Oracle of Delphi told Leonidas that either Persians will win or a king will die, and he believed that his sacrifice would save Greek city-states. When Leonidas got to know that they were surrounded, he called the Council of War. Should the Greeks retreat or stand their ground? Despite the impossibility of their position, Leonidas was firm in his decision. His 300 Spartans, along with a band of Thebans, would stay and fight. His sense of honor and strict military discipline made surrender unthinkable. For a Spartan like Leonidas, there were only 2 options: win or die. Leonidas ordered the Greek fleet to abandon its position and the remaining Greek army to move back. The 700 Thespians and 400 Thebans decided to stay and fight by their own will. The 300, the valiant display of courage and honor. A king and his guard fighting fearlessly. Their war style had no match with the Persians. They were fighters of mountains. It was the death of a leader and the birth of a legend. Leonidas left the protection of the narrow gorge and took up a position in an open area. While dangerously exposed, he was better placed to deploy his men and kill the greatest number of enemies. The Greeks, knowing that death was the only possible outcome, fought in a heedless frenzy. When their spears were broken, they drew their swords and continued to fight. Finally, Leonidas fell. Leonidas's head was cut off and his body was impaled. He was buried in Thermopylae along with the other soldiers. A stone funerary monument in the shape of a lion was later erected. When Leonidas decided he was going to stay with his Spartans as a rear guard so that the other Greeks could retreat, 700 Thespians and 400 Thebans volunteered to stay and fight to the last. Now, think about this. You are given the opportunity to retreat from a force of 300,000 Persians, and you choose to stay through out of your own free will. These were not the Spartans who were trained very young to fight and make a profession from it. These were farmers, but they didn't care. They stood and fought to the last man. It is a travesty that these men and their general Thermopylae, who stayed and fought to the last beside the greatest soldiers the Greeks had, are forgotten and their sacrifice unacknowledged by the masses. They fought and died the real heroes alongside the greatest of the Greeks. I hope that we never forget their sacrifice. But my dear friends, there is no denying to this fact that Spartans and their brave king Leonidas were those who held the Persians, and their sacrifice spirited up the whole Greek city-states to stand up and fight the single biggest threat, the Persians. What all my friends must be thinking is that Xerxes defeated the Greeks and Leonidas with his 300 lost the battle and their lives, but a mere defense of 3 days gave them such a glory in history. How? The time that followed proved that Leonidas did not lose the battle he was fighting. He wrote the victory of the Greeks with his blood. The courageous and selfless Leonidas did not come to win and go back. He wanted the Greeks to be united to save their land from the Persians, and that happened eventually. Thermopylae proved a victory in the long run because it marked the beginning of several important Greek victories against the Persians and boosted the morale of all the Greek city-states. Encouraged by the incredible bravery of the Spartans, the surviving allied Greek forces fought with renewed fury against the Persians. The details of events before and after the Thermopylae battle are taken from Herodotus' writings. Herodotus mentioned that the Persian king Xerxes had driven his men into battle with whips, while the Greeks fought of their own free will. Spartans did not have to be whipped to make them fight with all their might. Whips were only for slaves, not free men. Had the Spartans at Thermopylae and later Greek armies fled in fear, it is likely that a Persian victory would have had the effect of promoting dominance over the concept of a free city-state and force over free will. Compared to the ancient Greek civilization of the time, the Persians were a completely militaristic society and behaved as ruthless barbarians. Xerxes was seen as a merciless monarch and would surely have shown no mercy upon a conquered Greece. There is no doubt that, had his army won, history would have taken a totally different turn. If the Greeks had not finally succeeded in driving out the Persian forces, there would have been no enlightenment in Europe, nor the development of democracy or the concepts of individual freedom and human rights.